Welcome in, everybody. My name is Mitch, and I'm joined by one of my best mates. I've met him before. I can't wait to meet him again. Matty Thompson. How you going, brother?
Yeah, good, Ben. How are you?
Good, good. Look, I was a lot better before Fletcher Sharp scored 100, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. That was horrible viewing. We had a little talk before, and I actually can't say the words on YouTube and on how I really felt in the moment when Fletcher Sharp just was unstoppable. Mate, the first buy round, major buy round out of the way. How did it go for you? I know my team did all right, bar Fletcher Sharp, but I know you had a bit of last minute outage with Mr. Travojevic. What happened, mate? Run me through it.
Oh, mate, it was a bit of a shocker, to be honest. So, going into the round, I had 11 players. So, three trades would get me 14 players that could play. I ended up trading in a wing fullback. I got Garrick and I got Tavanga for mid. But I decided to be a bit spicy and get Katoa in for that first game and put the VC on him, so I didn't have to play Savala. And yeah, that backfired massively, didn't it? Because I did that, then the Burbo news came out after that game had already locked in, so I couldn't reverse my Katoa trade. And then I still obviously had to make the Tavanga and Garrick trades just to get 12 out. And yeah, unfortunately, no one actually owns Burbo, so I was the only one playing with 12 basically. And if I just left myself a little bit more flexibility, like knowing that Lucas could have been out late, I probably should have just held that third trade, just played Savala, and then Savala coming in and absolutely dominating, scoring a try, a couple try assists. So then I had to lose. I lost 10 points playing him over Fogarty because I just figured I'd lock in that 53 from him just in case Fogarty goes low. And then of course Fogarty comes and scores a try, doesn't he? So bit of a rough one, but besides that, pretty good. Like I scored what 740-ish.
Yep.
742 with only 12 players. So if you add on a Burbo or someone in there, I'm above average and I'm making ranks. But in the end, I lost 300 ranks, which isn't too bad considering I played one player less than everyone.
Honestly, you probably got out of that really, really good. That's the Fletcher Sharp definitely helped as well. Like Dylan Lucas and Fletcher Sharp going ballistic definitely helped. And the thing with Dylan Lucas is he's owned by, I know his ownership's 22 and Fletcher's 24, but Dylan Lucas is owned by more people in the top echelon of ranks. Whereas Fletcher Sharp is still owned by pretty much not everybody, but owned by a lot, except me, might I add. Let me preface that I don't own Fletcher Sharp, so that's just awesome, isn't it? Yeah, when Burbo went down, I knew straight away. I checked the group chat and I seen you saying Burbo's out again. There's words that you can't say on YouTube, and I just thought, oh my goodness, Burbo. And then I'm like, oh, hang on, like surely you can maneuver your stuff around. And then you showed me the trades, and you traded out Payne Haas. You kind of skipped over that really quick in the
Oh
introduction
yeah.
on your team. No Payne Haas, you've traded him, you've given him the boot. What is going on? I think you're one of the only people probably watching this video who has given him the boot. So what's the thought process there?
To be honest, I was a bit surprised that more people didn't jump off. I just checked the yet another fantasy start, and only 60 people out of the top 1,000, so 6% got rid of him. Um, but my theory is every year I normally start with Payne Haas and I trade him out around Origin because he picks up niggles, he gets lower minutes. Like I like holding the likes of Cleary, like halves and outside backs that really don't get a rest ever when they back up through Origin. Like I used to hold even Harry Grant, like I used to kind of trade him out over Origin because he would kind of do similar. Like I feel like the mids and hookers, they're just doing so much work in the middle that they need a bit more of a break and they can pick up a few niggles during Origin. So that was the theory. It was just like let's cash in. Um, I do have 330K in the bank after those trades, and I am down at 10 trades now. So we are redlining the trades. So I'll get into next week soon, but yeah, basically Haas to Devanga frees up a bunch of cash and allowed me to get in Katoa and do a few other things. It allows me to also get to potentially Campbell from like a Tamale or someone like that, or a Riley Smith. But whether I do that this week or next week, that's going to be the question.
Yeah, I think you had a really good week. I love a good pod, don't get me wrong. And look, Owen and Burbo, Yeah, it's a bit tough this week. Out with illness as well. A bit like Leo Thompson, who had gastro. Don't even get me started on Leo Thompson. And you taking a look at my side, you can see, yeah, I am missing a certain nut forward, and I have picked up Cam McInnes. Oh, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? Obviously, everybody knows who's watching this video. My love affair for Cam. I pulled a last minute switch, and it's actually kind of crazy because I'm down to 13 trades. And that is pretty low. It's not as low as 10, and I think ten's a bit crazy. But look, we play fantasy for fun, and trading is fun. So taking a look at my trades that I made last week, obviously I haven't made any just yet. Lockout's been open for 2 minutes, so we'll have a big play around with that. And I was always doing the Carraz to Teddy. That always made the most sense to me and my brain. They got the same buy schedule, the same player. So locked in Teddy, scoring a 51. That was a pretty gross fantasy game, scoring game to be fair. So I think long term, I'm happy with that trade. I said on last week's video when I was riding solo, I was always doing Egan to Hotboy. I was pretty keen on that trade to free up about 460 odd K. And yeah, again, he got it. He started from the bench. I wasn't really going to take that score. Again, I had Leo Thompson there, and Hotboy scored a dirty try, had a pretty gross offload, and he scored 35. Look, I'm happy with that. He's going to do a job in my 21 spot. Maybe he'll play 15 and 18. Not too sure, but I've got lots of cash now. To like you said, I got about 380K to get in a JC and Aitken. We already have Kalol Matangi, so pretty keen to spend that cash. And this last trade here. So we had the nonsense of Dylan Lucas. Was he out? Was he injured? The mole reporting that he was injured. So again, I started spiraling straight away. I went, okay, this is not good. I've got to trade him out. Whatever, whatever. Dylan Lucas was fine, so that's all well and good. I woke up Saturday morning to Barry Toohey tweeting. If you ever need news for Newcastle, it's Barry Toohey. And he come out and said, "Oh, it's actually not Dylan Lucas, it's Leo Thompson who's out." And straight away I went, "Are you serious? Like what? Like what is going on?" I brought this guy in. No one owns him. Relatively no one owns him. Gets a HIA. Luckily, still manages to score 30. Misses a week, and now he's out again. At the time, we didn't know why he was out. Like I thought straight away, it's HIA protocol concussions. Like I thought, oh, okay, what is it? Bit of rumors around that it was a hammy instead of Lucas. It was Leo Thompson. And at that point, I decided no. I had Hot Boy there who I could take the score, but I said, you know what? I'm not going to be stubborn. I'm going to accept the fact that Leo Thompson was a bad trade in. Not really bad because it was the wrong decision. It just didn't work out. These things happen. I'm not going to be stubborn. I'm going to move him on. And I thought, who works out better? It's either one of the two Sharks middles. I can just cut my losses, go to a Cam McInnes or go to an AFB. They were 10K apart. And I said, this isn't even a question, is it? I'm getting the big man Cam McInnes in straight away. I pulled him into my side that morning, and I spent a good 2 hours debating who I should go in and get. And yeah, Cam McInnes won out. About an hour before the game when they were doing the interviews with Adam O'Brien, he literally come out and just said, yeah, he's just got gastro. He's not able to play this week. So at that point, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I should just hold. I said, no, you know what? I've already psyched myself up on getting Cam McInnes in. I'm going to do it. He's my favorite player to own, and I bought the big man in. I seeped into my cap. I had about 460 odd K. Now I've only got about 380, but I'm happy to own him. He went over for an early try, and it was, yeah, I just had to watch Fletcher Sharp dominate without owning him. And then Cam McInnes scored a try early. So it made up for it, even though he only scored 54 with a try. It is a bit grim. But I'm happy to own long term. I'm going to hold him for the whole year. I can't wait. So in saying that, I had full 13 on the park and I scored 9 more points than you. So that's a little sad, isn't it, when you think about it? Obviously, Fletcher Sharp doing a job, who I don't own. Obviously, Dylan Lucas I do, which is really cool. But Britton Nikora for me as well, going really low. That was really gross to watch, and I'm so glad that every time I watch Jamie talk about the Sharks and Britton Nikora, he just says, "Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. It's not worth it." And I'm sitting here with him, sitting in my edge spot. That's just so awesome. So no, that's probably my fault. But again, he'll come good. I'm just waiting for a big score. I'm waiting. Luckily, he's on the bye this week, so he's going to serve a bit of a different purpose for me. And in saying that, Hosking went really low. Hosking scored, 9 more points, which again, 28's not as nice as 37, but it's not that much of a crazy jump with that. So yeah, I scored 751. Really, really happy with how my team set up for the buy rounds, and especially leading into round 13. Like I said, I have 386K, and my team is looking pretty stacked. Like I don't really probably need to trade this week, realistically, but I've got all this money sitting there. I've got a couple of trades waiting to be used, and they're calling my name. Yes, we'll have to see what happens with Origin, question marks around Payne Haas, and I already own Kalol Matangi. So that's probably a really good pivot to, you know, the big questions that we need to be asking ourselves this week. And I think it's the big three. Kalol Matangi, Jaden Campbell, and Ewan Aitken. Where do you sit on those three, mate? What are your initial plans, on a Monday night, very early days in the week? Where are you sitting with all those three?
So I wanted to leave myself the option to get whoever in that I could this week, if possible, because I do think that playing and part of the reason why I got Katoa last week was I was really pushing to have a strong 13 last week, and it really backfired because I ended up playing with a strong 12 or a decent 12. Um, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to use this third trade, even though it takes me down to 10 trades, because it sets me up after I completed those trades, technically I'm set up for all the buy rounds with Jazz in there that can flick to hooker. All of mine are set, and basically my trades from here are upgrades or injuries. So that's part of the reason why I pulled the trigger last week, and I also wanted to leave myself flexibility coming to this week for those main guys that you just mentioned. So Kaloma Tungi, we both got in the week before last, so that was nice to get him in for that big 80. And surprisingly, like not that many people got him in, I suppose, just because he was coming up into the buy. But with the low break even and just knowing what he can do in the mid, I thought he would be brought in by more people. I think it was like 10% or less of the top ranks. So nice to have him and not have to chase him this week. Aitken, this is the issue with the issue with Aitken is are you gonna sit one of your other guys? And the issue I guess with Campbell as well. So looking at my side for next week, if I brought in Campbell, I would have to sit Garrick, uh, Burbo, Drinkwater, Sharp, one of these guys. Which, maybe it's a Burbo, it's not even a question, or maybe it's Garrick, it's not even a question, and you chase the extra 20 points or whatever. But is that trade worthwhile using this round when next round we've got the Roosters bye and there's potentially going to be more problems that arise and we need to get 17 on the park? And maybe, maybe this week I'm trading out a Tamale to a Jaden Campbell, but maybe next week I realize, oh damn, I shouldn't have sold Tamale because, here's my cover in round 18 and I had this other guy injured instead. Like let's say Couchman doesn't come back from his injury and now here's a trade because he gets a setback or something like that. So I do like holding trades this week for me, down at 10. Campbell as well is another one. Like you get in, but is he going to do, like he might score an extra 20 points than a Garrick or someone, but is it worth losing that flexibility for the following week just to get that extra 20 points? So last week I took the gamble on Katoa and it didn't really pay off. I should have just played Savala. So this week I'm probably leaning towards just playing cautious. And then I've got the likes of Riley Smith, who's still making money, and Savala, and I could trade one of them out straight to Campbell with 330k potentially next week. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting. What about yourself? How are you feeling about those three?
Yeah, well, I'm stoked to already have Kalol Matangi. And obviously the news with Tarpanay, this morning was we were all pretty sure he was going to get suspended. He was done for a crusher tackle, then had a shoulder charge in the game, and he's already been suspended for a shoulder charge. So I thought for sure Tarpanay was going to be gone for about 2 weeks, but he had the bye as well. So that would have been 3 weeks. And I probably would have traded him at that point to a Campbell. And then I've got Tom Jenkins sitting here who's done a marvelous job. I mean, if it wasn't for Fletcher Sharp carving up, a 36 from Tom Jenkins would have been my favorite score of the whole buy of the whole round 12 buy because yeah, just did such a good job. Made that little last bit of cash. So with all this money, 386, I can go Jenkins to anybody in the game. And I've got a few plans on that. I need a wing fullback for round 15. And obviously Campbell's just sitting there waiting to be picked up. And then, but like you said, then I'd have to be sitting one of these guys. And the obvious answer is probably Kalen Ponga. And I can't really loop in the wing fullback slot. Obviously, I'll be able to do some pretty fancy looping in the mids and then, a KPP, but I can't really loop Kalen Ponga. So pending what happens in Origin, obviously I've got Payne Haas. Cleary is fine because if worse comes to worse, I can just play Savala. I'm not really too worried about that. Pending, Payne Haas has a quad injury. Kalen Ponga, he sucks. That I really want to be playing these sort of guys. I've got Jaden Campbell sitting there, and that leaves me with about 60K, which is a really, really good upgrade. I'm getting the best wing fullback in the game. But the other answer that I'm looking at is going from Jenkins to Ewan Aitken and just taking if Ponga's fine, I can take the Ponga score, whatever it may be. I'm not too worried. I can go Jenkins to Aitken, who's a gun. Gives me obviously I'm fine for around 15 edges, but one of them is Britain Nikora, and that's just gross. Again, do I really want to be playing him? Like I bought him for a reason, so I should die on that hill. But and it gives me around 18 edge, which I am needing as well, and it leaves me with about 220 odd K in the bank to upgrade again. I've got Savala who's coming to the end of his days, and if I don't play Savala this week, he's still sitting there with I'm just trying to find where he was in my team. This with a really low break even of 11. So if he comes out and scores, a 38 or a 40, he's still going to make another 30K. And I can, obviously the news with Galvin going to the Dogs, is it going to hinder Matt Burton? We don't really know, but I don't need to make that trade just yet. If I go Jenkins to Aitken and then, a Savala to Matt Burton next week, it still leaves me with 100K in the bank to do another upgrade. Is Katonga coming to the end of his days? These sort of questions. So I like the idea of Aitken instead of Campbell. He's got a pretty tough matchup this week, and I know you don't really play matchups. He plays Melbourne, which, are not great, but again, you're not really looking at the single matchup. He's got a pretty high break even as well, with Aitken only having a 20 break even. I'm just wondering if it's better for my team in the short term to go from Jenkins to Aitken, which is a really, really good trade. With the lower break even, get the good score this week, and then leave me with still 220K to make some further upgrades. I'm not too sure where I'm at with that. Obviously, like I said, I can do some really fancy looping with like a Payne Haas. That would probably need me to get Aitken and then move Kalolmatangi up and all sorts of stuff with I've got Nikora who I can loop in the edge. I've got also Cam McInnes who I can loop in mid. So, if Haas plays and scores low or, I can do all sorts of fancy things. So it's just going to come down to what I feel like doing. I don't really want to use more than one trade. I don't think there's a world where I can get both this week with this cash. I think if I didn't make the Cam McInnes upgrade last week and I just had Leo still, I maybe could have forced both the trades, but I can't. So I think it'll be a good week. I've got a pretty fine 13. If, like I said, if I hold Ponga and I play Ponga and he scores like a 45, then I can live with that. And the rest of my 13 is quite strong. So I think this could be a really good week to bank some trades while still making a significant upgrade. Like you said, next week is the Roosters bye. I've got Teddy and Savala. I pretty confident Savala won't be there. So I can cover Teddy while, still upgrading my side. It's kind of where I'm at. You and me were in a similar boat because we already have Kalolmatangi. I think Kalolmatangi is the priority out of the three, and I don't know if there's many, qualms about that. I think that's pretty clear that he will be the best and the number one bring in this week, and I think that's the correct decision in the mid. We saw what he could do last year. We saw what he did a few weeks ago. He probably won't always play the 80, but you don't really need him to at that price. You and me, we got the 50K price rise, which is just unreal. It's going to go down as one of my better trades of the season when I look back at it at the end of the year. But at 680K, he's going to be the number one bring in, and I suggest that he is the best bringing out of all three. There will be some people who try to bring in all three of them, and I think that's a fine move. A lot of people have more trades than you and me. I can promise you they have more than 10. So I think that's probably a good move for those guys who have some spare cash and they can make some upgrades without going sideways. That's kind of where I'm at. What do you think about bringing all, two out of the three, or even maybe trying to launch? And I know Jamie's trying to maybe potentially get all three of them. Where do you sit with that?
I think it really depends who you're having to bench. So in your team, obviously, you've got Kai Pearce-Paul that you're probably going to loop in the edge,
Yeah.
and because he plays the first game, and then if he goes 50 plus, I'm assuming you're not going to get Aitken in that case.
No, well, I haven't had it like I need to visually set it out. I was at work and I was thinking, okay, who plays when? I was trying to maneuver it around in my brain. I will loop KPP and he looks pretty good for a 50. And then the other worry with that is Payne Haas. Obviously, I'm going to play Terrell. I won't VC, it doesn't matter who I VC right now. but I won't VC
Mm.
Kalomatangi because he's my option of moving up and down. So May's gonna be my captain. I'm gonna play Tarpanay. It's just with Haas. Obviously, I don't as a Haas owner. It's weird. You don't own Haas anymore. Good luck with that. But I don't. If he plays Origin as a Broncos fan, I'm like 50-50 if he backs up. It might sound a little silly to some, but I think as a Broncos fan, like we need him to win games. Like we play Manly at Brookvale this week. If we don't have Payne Haas, one, are we going to win at all? Two, like we probably need him to play. So if APP comes out and scores like 55, I'm like, sweet, then I can move. I'd probably have Aitken in my back row. Maybe like I can play a Katonga or something. And that gives me a chance to see what Haas scores and however I can loop it. I'm pretty sure I can. I've had to think about it and see where I go. Maybe Haas scores 47 and I don't have to take that score. So, uh, yeah, we'll have a play around, and that's probably a pretty big topic that we should probably discuss is looping this week. Last week, you obviously could do a little bit of looping. Some people brought in, like you had three halves to try to fit in. Like, you brought in Katoa and then you looped Zavala and you said, okay, we'll take Zavala's score or however you wanted to do it. And this week, it opens up a massive can of worms with just the sheer amount of looping you can do. It's a bit of a tough spot. Obviously, the teams on a buy are the Sharks, Bulldogs, and Dolphins, right? So not a lot of mids and edges in those two teams. Now, somehow I've got three in Hopoi, Cam, and Nikora. So I can do some pretty crazy looping, which a lot of other people, it's probably not a good example because other people won't be able to do what I can do. A lot of people have AFB, which is really good. So you'll be able to do a similar loop with AFB. And that's kind of where I sit on the looping. What about you, mate? Have you got any looping for this week? Do you think you'll be able to?
Not much to be honest, man, because I've only got Katoa out and then Couchman, if he doesn't play, then I can use him, but he plays the first game. So the idea was just I can start him in the mid and then I can put Jazz and Clark on the bench, or I could play around with Riley Smith, or like there's a few options. Like I have to, but I have to leave out two of like about seven guys, and one of them might be Wong, one of them might be Hosking, Riley Smith. Like I've got a bunch of guys to fit into those six spots. So yeah, I've got Riley Smith, Tarpany, May, Kalomatangi, Wong, Tavanga, Clark, Hubner. So yeah, I have to leave a couple of those guys out. Right now, I'm kind of leaving Hosking out of Edge, because I can't loop in Edge as well. But I don't really love it. But Wong and Hosking both played the last game, so I can't really do. I have to kind of just pick one of them, and then yeah, probably gonna have to put Kalomatangi in the other Edge spot. But it's a bit tricky. I think a lot of people will be struggling to loop this week actually, because a lot of people will own Farmworth, but so they might be able to loop in centers, but they might have a mid, but you might have to be like looping between two kind of guns, and depending on when they play, I think it makes it a little bit tricky as well. The good thing is Haas plays on that Saturday night, so you've got the likes of Tarpany, the likes of Clark, um, and some of these other guys from the Roosters that you can loop in after them, but. It's an awkward week to try and loop because it's like realistically you want to play more of these guys. And I think for you, for example, if the likes of Haas and KPP both go 50 plus, I can't really see you being able to make a trade because if you trade in an Aiken, unless you go wing fullback and trade Ponga to JC or something like that, or keep Ponga and trade Jenkins to JC, and then just bench Ponga,
Yeah,
that could get
but
you potentially 20 points
yeah,
more.
by that point though, Ponga would have already played, and it's like, well, I can't really. I've got to make that decision
Hmm.
first. Yeah, I think I'll have it set up correctly where I'll take Aitken out, like I'll take KPP out, see what he scores. Do something like this, uh see how he goes, and then if he goes low, like let's say KPP scores like 44 or something, I can go, okay, well I don't want anything to do with that. I can do like a Jenkins to an Aitken, throw Aitken in here, throw Cam McInnes where Payne Haas is, see what Payne scores. Oh, there you go. They play in the same game anyway. So Jazz and Cam.
Yeah.
So these are all, yeah, the things you've got to kind of think about, and it's pretty hard to talk about and go through and a lot of detail when you haven't actually and seen it. And a lot of this time with looping, you just have to. It's pretty. It's I'm not never really been one to be able to tell someone that your loop's correct or anything because I have to physically sit down and say it out loud. I've got to say, okay, he plays here. This guy will go for him, and I've really got to dumb it down. So it is a pretty exciting week. The major buy round was, I'm glad we got that first one out of the way. That one's usually the easiest. A lot of people, you have the most amount of trades come around 11, 12 compared to 15 to 18. So it's usually the easiest to plan for. So it'll be pretty easy, well, not easy to make ranks, but I feel like, if you put in the work now, set your team up the best you can for 15 and then leading into 18, round 19 is really, really tricky as well with Rabbitohs, Raiders and the Dragons, I think from memory, missing, or I know the first two are definitely missing. So a lot of people have a lot of Raiders. Chances are we want two South forwards. So you got to look at all these sort of things like that. And yeah, mate, that's probably a good idea for us to leave it there. I think. I don't really have anything
I was just
else.
gonna quickly just check in on. So the average trades left is 13.4 for the top 1,000. Just to let everyone know, if you aren't checking yet another fantasy stat site, it's really good for just giving you a kind of general idea of, where the top of the pack is going. Average squad salary cap is just under 13.9 mil. So just wanted to check in with you. Where's yours at? I'm at 13.83, so
Yeah,
pretty
I'm at
close.
the exact same. I'm at 13.837. So that's yeah, it's pretty close actually. I didn't expect it to be that close. See, my god awful rank. I lost about 200 odd ranks, which is not bad. I thought I'd do a lot better, but that sharp score just blew it all out the window. As soon as he went over, and I was that frustrated with it when he scored that well because I tried to look at fantasy statistics or whatever. I'd see how highly owned he was, and my computer just wasn't having it. It wasn't loading, and I just thought, yeah, I have to have a shower and cool off. So but yeah, I'm at 13.837. I got, like I said, nearly 400K in the bank. Part of me wants to, like, you're right. I don't really need to make that trade this week. My only really worry is if I leave it like this, it's obviously everybody, like, state of origin has to happen first. If Ponga comes out and gets knocked out in origin and he's not playing, and, that might change our mind. There's only so much you can do and say on a Monday night. See how Payne Haas holds up. I'm not trading him. I'm going to hold him. I'm going to hold Seti, and then see what crazy loops we can make. Like, so I got all this cash here. I want to spend it. I've got some plans. I've put in some plans in writing for what potential upgrades I can do. I've been trying to sell Kitio Katoga for like 4 weeks. He's been in my plans to sell an upgrade, and he just keeps scoring mid fifties. And it's yeah, a bit of a news flash. You can't really sell someone who keeps scoring mid fifties. So, but again, like, do I even want to play him this week? Can I even play him this week? He's probably another option to potentially loop in my edge spot. Do I want to play Katoga or Garrick in my centers? I never even thought I'd even say that out loud. There's another world where I don't even play Ponga. I can play Katonga in my centers and then play Garrick in the wing fullback. And these are all things, I wish I could loop in that wing fullback slot. That would make my life a lot easier if I could loop Ponga, but I can't. Um, that's probably where a good stepping stone for us to end it, mate. I was pretty keen to go 50 minute with you, but there's not really much else for us to talk about, to be honest. It's there's only so much you can do with all this information we've got. It's a bit of a shorter week, so you don't even need to field 17. So there's not really too much more else to say. Short and sweet, I think. What do you reckon?
Yeah, one thing I think we should mention before we cover it off is if you're getting one of these guys, like an Aitken or a Kolomatangi, what is the threshold for you in terms of who you then removing from your team to play one of them? Because you're going to have to remove someone to play one of them. Would you bring in a Kolomatangi if it meant having to remove this week like a Hosking or a Wong or a um, even a Tavanga? Like, what's your threshold for making that upgrade, I guess? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really team dependent as well. Like, I think with my side, like, with Jazz, let's say my options to play mid are, let's say KPP fails and I need to play Haas or Tavanga, and then Haas. gets, he doesn't black up, right? He's just out completely. And so I've like, okay, the only option I have is Jazz Savanga, or I've got all this cash sitting here, and I've got Tom Jenkins, or I've got, a dad who's like, I like Tom Jenkins as the best example just because he's done his job. So it's not like Tamale who's going to keep serving his job, right? Tamale, you've got him for 15 and 18. Riley Smith still making cash. Jenkins has done his job. I don't need him anymore. So if let's say Payne Haas gets injured, doesn't back up, whatever it is, and I've got Jazz Tavanga there, or I can just make that upgrade. I've got the cash sitting there. It's a one trade thing. I can go Jenkins to Keon Kalamatangi for like 220K or something. Like that is just a no-brainer. So if you're looking at your team and you've got no-brainer upgrades, right? Like I think Max from the group chat has like 600K just sitting there, right? Like, if you've got all this cash sitting there and you can make these really big upgrades that don't just help this week, like Keon, right? Plays now, plays 15, plays 18. He's priced at like 48, 49. He's a 60 guy in the middle, right? You just pull the trigger. So Keon is a pretty good example for that. But I think, yeah, like I said, Aitken and JC, do you need to make these trades this week? Can you can you stop? Can you wait? Can you hold out on it on a week? I think weeks like this will be really easy to field a good 13. So it'll stop you from making a lot of trades. If you've got all this cash sitting there and you can turn two or three duds into two or three keepers, then that's the name of the game, right? Like pull the trigger. Aitken's got to break even of 23. If he scores 55, which we know he is, he's going to go up another 30K. Is he still a good bring in at 655K instead of 622K? Yeah, he is. But if you can pull it now, get the good score, it's food for thought, right? And it's going to be a big week of playing around with your team, your best 13, and maybe doing a little bit of planning as well. Luckily, everybody, all the three big guys in Keon, Aitken, and JC, they all play 15. So that definitely helps. I doubt many people will be bringing in guys this week who don't play in round 15. Again, your Bulldogs, your Sharks, and your Dolphins are all on the buy, so there are a few relevant guys there. So maybe you're kind of saving some cash if you want to get Burton next week or one of the Sharks mids that you don't have, AFB, Cam McInnes, whoever it might be that you're looking for another mid. Maybe it's them. So you leave a bit of cash and you use your trades this week to kind of help prioritize those as well. Similar to what I've been doing with, Matt Burton. If I go JC, it probably eliminates me from getting Burton straight away. But if I go, one trade to Aitken, Savala to Burton next week. They're two really good upgrades, still leaving me with 120 odd in the bank. So good question, mate. That's why you're on this. That's why you're on this podcast for. It's why you're on the video because you are food for thought, mate. I just kind of ramble and talk absolute nothing, and you keep us composed. So I think
All good.
that's
Thanks, man.
I think that's probably where we'll leave it. Nice and only one Zoom call tonight. Normally when we jump on the video, we've got to do two or three to get it all in the video, but we're keeping it at one tonight. So I think that's where we'll end it, mate. And thanks for jumping on. Not too sure when you'll jump back on next, but I always enjoy our time together, mate.
Thanks, bro. Hopefully, I'll have more than 12 players playing next time I jump on. And yeah, just a reminder to everyone to, if you don't need to make trades, probably just don't make them because you'll look back on these kind of weeks where you had like 17 available players and you decided to make three trades or four trades and you only need to play 13. You'd be like, why did I do that? So yeah, we'll have more carnage coming up. So these weeks, these minor buy rounds, try to save some trades if you can. But also, if you've got 15, go for it.
Pretty much what he's saying. Don't do what I do last week and make three trades. But I've got Cam McInnes, and that's all that counts. That's where we'll leave it. Our Zoom call's running out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember, leave all your comments in the comments below. Me and Maddie will jump on. The only videos we kind of, jump on and have a yarn to. So we appreciate you listening if you stayed to the end. Have a good week. Listen to what Maddie said. He's probably right and I'm wrong. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.